Hello, curious minds. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a question that really sits at the heart of a functioning society, doesn't it? How do we foster unwavering trust? In our institutions and, well, in each other, especially in our professional lives, we've gathered a stack of incredibly insightful sources, and our mission today is to distill their wisdom. We're looking at crucial concepts like probity, the power of transparency through things like the Right to Information Act, and, the ethical foundations of our workplaces. Get ready for some serious aha moments, I think.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating as we delve into these sources is how these areas, which might seem distinct at first glance, the highest forms of integrity, our right to information, the values guiding our professional conduct, they're all deeply interconnected. They aren't just isolated ideas. They really form the bedrock of effective, trustworthy, good governance.
Okay, let's unpack this foundational concept our sources keep bringing up, probity. We hear it described as the highest form of integrity. But what does that really mean in practice? How does it go beyond just like being honest or following the rules?
It's definitely more profound than just simple honesty. Our sources define it as complete and confirmed integrity, being
Right.
absolutely incorruptible. And it's not just about an individual's moral compass, right? It's also about procedural integrity in every single action.
Procedural integrity, so the process itself.
Exactly. The process itself has to be fair, transparent, beyond reproach. Thinkers like Bentham emphasize strict adherence to ethical principles. But what's unique, and something Sardar Patel highlighted, is upholding ethics for the sheer sanctity of office and trust. It's about respecting the public position you hold, and the faith people place in you.
That makes a lot of sense, respecting the office itself. So what happens when this kind of profound probity is missing? Can you give some vivid examples? What are the real-world consequences?
Oh, absolutely. Our sources provide some pretty striking examples from the public sphere. We see administrative corruption, like in the Pooja Ketkar case, where, processes were just subverted, or judicial corruption, as illustrated by the Yashwant Verma case, which really eroded faith in the justice system itself. And then there's the really unsettling issue of extrajudicial killings, where due process is just completely abandoned. In each instance, the core principles, integrity, respect for established procedures, and ultimately public trust, they're profoundly violated. And the impact isn't just on individuals, it's on the very fabric of society.
That's powerful and unfortunately very real, as you say. So beyond these violations, what are the positive elements, the active elements we should look for when we talk about probity in action? What does it actually do?
Right. So when probity is present, our sources point to key elements like selflessness, acting purely in the public interest, not for personal gain. That's huge. Then there's openness and transparency, ensuring decisions are visible, understandable. Objective decision-making, where personal biases are consciously set aside. Actively avoiding conflicts of interest, making absolutely sure private interests don't clash with public duty. It's also about ensuring public funds are used properly based on trust and fostering responsive governance, where the government genuinely responds to citizen needs and concerns.
Okay.
So what this tells us is that probity isn't just about not doing bad things. It's an active, sort of multifaceted commitment to the public good, almost like a code for building systemic trust,
That distinction is really important, not just passive honesty, but active commitment. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Where do these powerful ideas of probity truly come from philosophically? It feels like they're rooted in something much deeper than just modern law.
They absolutely are. Yeah, our sources trace its roots back centuries. You see echoes in Indian epics like the Ramayana and Mahabharata exploring leadership, duty, righteous conduct. Confucian ideas from ancient China emphasize the right attitude of a civil servant towards their duties in the public. Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher, stressed performing duty with the right intentions, focusing on moral obligation regardless of the outcome. And then you have John Stuart Mill's utilitarian focus, maximizing happiness for the greatest number. And beyond specific thinkers, these ideas also connect deeply to virtue ethics, focusing on developing good character traits and the foundational ideas of social contract theory.
Right. Social contract theory. Our sources suggest this is a crucial philosophical basis for probity. For those of us maybe who've forgotten our Philosophy 101, how did this idea evolve?
Yeah.
And what does it mean for how governments and citizens interact?
Well, historically, it really gained prominence during the Renaissance and Enlightenment. It was a challenge to the whole divine right of kings idea.
Right, the idea that kings got their power straight from God.
Exactly. So thinkers like Hobbes and Locke proposed a different idea. that government legitimacy comes from an agreement, a social contract between the rulers and the ruled. Essentially, citizens give up some individual rights, maybe the right to take revenge or just do whatever they want to a government, and in return, the government provides public services, maintains order, protects other rights. From an Indian perspective, Kautilya's ancient concept of Yogashema offers a similar kind of idea, aiming for a welfare state driven by public interest, the happiness of the people, accountability, and the common good.
So it's this fundamental agreement, give and take between the governed and the government. How does this age-old theory play out today in our contemporary world?
It's surprisingly relevant, actually. We see its continued importance in modern examples, like increasing voter turnout in places like Jammu and Kashmir. Our sources suggest this indicates a greater acceptance and participation in the idea of government, citizens actively upholding their part of the contract, perhaps. And another example is the inclusion of the third gender in voter identification. That shows how the social contract evolves to respect and include all identities, ensuring the government's protective role extends to everyone. It's a living, breathing agreement that has to adapt over time.
That's a perfect segue into another powerful tool our sources highlight for ensuring probity and transparency, the Right to Information Act, or RTI.
Yeah.
For those maybe less familiar, tell us about its origins and how it's designed to work.
Right, the RTI Act. It just recently marked its 20th anniversary, which is quite something. And it actually has incredibly humble grassroots origins. It grew out of movements like the Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sanathan MKSS, a farmers and workers organization in Rajasthan. They started a struggle for fair wages during a famine, and they realized that access to government records was absolutely key to preventing corruption. Knowing where the money was supposed to go, this push eventually led to the Freedom of Information Bill in 2002, which then matured into the Comprehensive RTI Act in 2005.
So it really came from the ground up, the testament to citizen power. What were the critical features of the RTI that our sources emphasize for effective governance?
The Act is designed with some key pillars. For instance, Section 2H clarifies public authority, defining exactly who it applies to, primarily government bodies. Though, importantly, not private entities or political parties, which is a point of ongoing debate.
Right.
Section 3 grants every citizen the right to access information. But what's truly crucial for fostering probity and really reducing what we call information asymmetry.
Evening out the playing field, basically.
Exactly. So everyone has access to the same facts as Section 4. This mandates self-disclosure.
Right.
It means public authorities are supposed to proactively release information without citizens even having to ask for it. That's the ideal.
That makes perfect sense. The more that's out there proactively, the less need for individual requests, right?
Yeah.
But if it's such a powerful tool, what are the challenges? The limitations our sources point out that hinder its full potential.
Yeah, this raises an important question. While RTI empowers, there are practical hurdles. For example, Section 6 allows requests without stating a reason, which, while good for privacy maybe, can sometimes lead to frivolous complaints perhaps, or misuse. Then there's Section 8, outlining legitimate grounds for rejection, trade secrets, personal information. These can sometimes be interpreted quite broadly. And what's truly fascinating, and a point of ongoing tension our sources highlight, is the conflict with the more recent Digital Personal Data Protection Act, the DPDPA from 2023.
How do they clash?
Well, Section 44 of DPDPA suggests that personal information can be denied even if public interest is served, which seems to potentially clash with RTI's fundamental spirit of transparency,
Yeah, that sounds like a complex balancing act between privacy and transparency. And what about other barriers, maybe historical or systemic ones to full transparency that our sources identify?
Our sources definitely highlight how historical laws continue to pose challenges. Colonial-era laws like the Official Secrets Act of 1923, for instance, its wording is quite vague and can be misused to classify information and reject RTI requests, effectively keeping things secret when maybe they shouldn't be.
Right, using old laws to block new transparency.
Pretty much. Similarly, the now changed Section 123 of the Indian Evidence Act previously allowed non-disclosure of unpublished records relating to state affairs. Vague again. We also see issues like political parties being exempt from RTI despite a significant 2013 ruling by the Central Information Commission that tried to bring them under its purview. That hasn't stuck. And then there are practical challenges, lack of awareness among citizens about how to engage with public information officers, the PIOs, instances of poor self-disclosure from authorities, sometimes information is provided only in English, even if requested in Hindi, or you see high rates of rejection without really clear justification.
So, quite a few hurdles still. Given all these challenges, what does this mean for making RTI truly effective, for ensuring probity and governance? What are the pathways forward?
Well, the solutions definitely involve increasing digitization of records. Making information easily accessible online is a big one. Providing proper training for public information officers is critical, too. They need to be more sensitive to public needs, less bureaucratic, perhaps. Increasing that proactive self-disclosure, we talked about Section 4, that's key. The government putting information out there before you even ask. And then fostering a more pro-public attitude among information commissioners, especially given the delays our sources note in processing requests and appeals, that's essential. And finally, just simplifying the process for first appeals when a request is denied. That would significantly empower citizens.
Okay, so practical steps. Now, moving from broader governance to individual behavior, particularly in public service, our sources draw a really clear distinction between a code of conduct and a code of ethics.
Yeah.
How do they differ?
Yeah.
And why are both considered essential for probity?
Yeah, this is a crucial distinction. A code of conduct is essentially a set of enforceable, codified, written rules, the do's and don'ts. For example, rules against accepting lavish gifts or requiring intimation for property purchases or getting pre-sanctioned for royalties from books written by public servants, things like that. And it carries clear sanctions for non-compliance. If you break the rule, there's a consequence. Our sources point out that its origins go way back to a 1930s compendium, with the 1964 Santhanam Committee rules still largely in use today.
Still using rules from 1964.
Largely, yes. And that's identified as a problem. They're old, often vague, and have been difficult to enforce effectively for over 60 years.
Okay, so it's about clear enforceable rules, even if they're outdated. Why are these rules considered so necessary for public servants?
Well, they're seen as vital for several reasons. To correct maybe public misconceptions about services, to instill fundamental values like integrity and devotion to duty, and to halt any deterioration of public life. They also promote idealism, things like allegiance to the Constitution, national pride, and they're meant to help in a kind of moral reawakening. They set a baseline for acceptable behavior.
Right, a baseline. But our sources mention a key gap here, don't they?
Yeah.
Especially for maintaining that high level of probity we talked about earlier. What's the issue?
This raises an important question, yeah. While a code of conduct exists, our sources emphatically state that a comprehensive code of ethics for public servants is not yet put in place. And this isn't for lack of trying, apparently. It's due to the immense challenge of defining universal ethical values in a way that makes them easily enforceable and makes violations provable. It's just hard to legislate what's right in every nuanced situation, as opposed to simply defining what's clearly wrong.
Ah, okay. So the code of conduct is the don't do this, but the code of ethics is more about the you should strive for this.
Exactly. Moving from avoiding wrong to actively pursuing right.
And that code of ethics is crucial then for truly fostering integrity, probity, and transparency, isn't it? It goes beyond just rule following.
Precisely. Our sources suggest that a suitable model code of ethics would need to integrate fundamental principles from various ethical theories, foundational values like impartiality and nonpartisanship, and constitutional morality. It wouldn't just be about avoiding sanctions. It would be about fostering a genuine spirit of service, consistently maintaining public trust, and ensuring accountability that goes far beyond just mere legal compliance. It aims for a higher standard, ideally driven by inner conviction, not just external rules.
That makes sense. Okay, finally, let's connect these big ideas, ethics, governance, back to our daily professional lives. Our sources touch on work culture and workplace ethics, and importantly, they're a crucial link to mental health. How do ethical workplaces actually promote both productivity and well-being?
Well, workplace ethics are kind of the unwritten rules, sometimes written too, that guide behavior. They ensure truthfulness, transparency, and ultimately foster a positive environment where trust and collegiality can actually thrive. We've all seen examples, perhaps. Those unsettling viral videos from certain banks, our sources mention Bandon or Connor Bank, that showed employees being, well, pressured or treated unfairly.
Yeah, those were tough to watch.
Right. They highlight a clear absence of socially responsible actions and basic fairness in some organizations. And such environments invariably lead to significant mental health concerns for employees: burnout, stress, anxiety. What's fascinating here is the emphasis our sources place on holistic competence. It's not just about professional skill, but also ethical grounding. They illustrate this with a kind of four-quadrant model: Someone with high skill but low values can actually be the worst combination
Why the worst?
because their competence allows them to do more damage, potentially. Contrast that with individuals who possess both high values and high skills. That's where the true organizational and societal benefit lies.
That makes so much sense. A highly skilled but unethical person can be incredibly destructive. So what does this mean then for both employers and employees to foster a truly ethical work environment?
It means ensuring fairness, respect, and civility. Basic stuff, but crucial, especially during challenging times like layoffs. Our sources strongly advocate for ethical capitalism, social responsibility, sound corporate governance. They urge companies to prioritize stakeholder value, and employees are critical stakeholders, not just cogs in a machine,
Right.
and to actively consider alternatives to layoffs. This reflects a kind of short-term pain for long-term gain philosophy, where organizations prioritize long-term sustainability and employee well-being over immediate, often short-sighted profits. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture of mental health, well, an ethical climate ensures fairness and respect. That directly reduces employee burnout. Probity builds trust, which lessens fear and anxiety. Empathy and emotional intelligence help manage conflicts, preventing work-driven mental health crises. It ensures dignity and self-worth at work. Ultimately, it's about creating a place where people feel safe, respected, and genuinely valued.
So weaving this all together, what does this mean for you, our dedicated learner who provided these incredible sources for us to dive into?
Well, I think this deep dive reveals that concepts like probity, transparent governance, ethical work cultures, these aren't just abstract ideals that apply to, distant governments or big corporations. They are deeply intertwined. They shape the very trust we place in our institutions, the quality of our public services, and profoundly the quality of our own professional lives. They're really about how we build a society that functions effectively and, well, decently for everyone.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If the principles of probity, that active, unwavering commitment to integrity and public good, were truly embedded at every single level, from individual conduct, how we treat each other, to institutional policy, how might our daily interactions with public services and our workplaces fundamentally change? Imagine the ripple effect on trust, on efficiency, on just general well-being.
Indeed, yeah. It raises an important question, I think, for all of us listening. In a world that seems to be craving trust and authenticity more than ever, how might we as individuals and as a society actively champion these principles? How do we help build a future where integrity isn't just an ideal we talk about, but it becomes a lived reality for absolutely everyone?